to introduce John Sprank first, Global Sales Director now at Wefarm, but also settle veteran, and a long experience from that and your own entrepreneurial ventures as well. So I'll let you present the others.
Thank you. Yeah. I'd like to introduce Henrik. Henrik is the CEO and Director of Foxberry, a provider of financial advice and front office technology for the financial sector. And then Daniel is VP Business Development at LHB Bank. Daniel has experience with working in multiple fintech companies such as Starling Bank as a head of business development, and before that Currency Cloud. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to talk about the trials and tribulations of being a European company coming into the UK, and our experiences and our journeys really. Myself, I was the first salesperson in the UK for iZettle back in the day, a long time ago. So first of all, Henrik, what do you think are the biggest cultural differences between the Nordics, the Baltics and the UK?
Right. You know what? They're great grounds to as a Nordic person, or particularly as a Swedish person, or Swedish from that perspective, to start building a business here. You know, we hold great admiration for each other's crime drama, and we also we have a very similar humor. So that's very helpful. You know, it's easy, I'd say, to be honest. And yeah, I guess I could go into that more later. But you know, I find the whole experience of setting up a business in the UK to be easy, very straightforward. It's a very good climate for setting up a business in the UK. There are many entrepreneurial schemes, you know, that make it that just makes it easier to set something up in this country.
Daniel?
Well, I don't want to generalise too much because I've only just worked for one Estonian bank before, but I think you know, the Estonian culture is quite collaborative. In the UK, you're often expected to have quite direct responsibility for doing tasks, and often in a meeting in Estonia, you can actually, you know, sort of lead and think, well, hang on a second, who's in charge of sort of taking this forward? But joking aside, it's very collaborative. So we're not necessarily kind of moving fast and breaking things like, you know, is often heard in the fintech space, but it's a little bit more kind of strategic, and it's quite interesting as well. There's kind of no chit chat as well with Estonians, but only after you've had 2 drinks. So then they'll tell you their deepest, darkest secrets. So yeah.
So I mean, for me back in the day, you know, coming from, I was at Living Social before I was at iZettle, and I worked with a lot of UK salespeople. But when we came to the UK and I sort of scaled the team up, I did a lot of hiring from places like Swedes in London on Facebook, and got my interns from there because they were super energetic, super friendly, and I was hiring on energy, likability, because we were sending them out with a brand new product that nobody's ever seen before. It was this weird box that plugs in the bottom of your phone, and you swipe your card with it, and nobody got it. You know, we were talking to taxi drivers, markets, you know, all the rest of it, and nobody really got it. So we could have recruited interns from the UK, but we really liked the fact we wanted to keep that, because the product looked like it had been designed by a Swede. It had that sort of IKEA, Volvo type feel to it, you know what I mean? It had like that, I don't know, something you can't touch or feel, but the whole packaging and everything. So we wanted to keep it authentic all the way through. So that was really interesting for us. The only other thing that was a shock was when I started managing the team was everybody clears off in the summer. I didn't know. I was like, oh, wait a minute, where's everybody gone in the head office? So we used to go work at the festivals during the summer period because we couldn't, you know, the 6 to 8 weeks was, we couldn't get hold of anybody. Everybody was in their summer cabin.
Yes, yes, very true.
I'm still trying to campaign for that in the UK.
Yeah, I'm up for it, don't get me wrong, we're just, you know. So, Henrik, first steps when expanding into the UK, what would you recommend? What's your experience?
Well, so we didn't expand into the UK. I was already in the UK. I moved here in 2006, and I started working for JP Morgan, and I worked for investment banks for a while until I wanted to become free, and in 2014, together with a couple of mates, I set up Foxberry. So, but I guess there is certainly some similarity, even though you're not expanding here, you want to set something up here. It was very easy and straightforward. But compared to many of the Nordic countries, Sweden in particular, setting up a limited company takes some time. Here you can have a limited company in 24 hours. There are really great schemes to finance your business. There's a few things that you should look into, I'd say, if you're trying to set something up here, which if you actually need to put funds in it, it's the seed enterprise investment schemes, the enterprise investment schemes, and so forth, which are extremely beneficial for a startup or even a more established company. You can get funds into that business very effectively. The trickiest thing for us when we set up the company was getting a bank account. In the UK there's this catch-22 when getting a bank account, even as a private individual but also as a company. In order to get a bank account, you have to have a business and a login address, etc. In order to get an address, you need a bank account. And on it goes. But I think that's changed a lot now in the recent years. One company that started here, Revolut, for example, you can do your banking with them, and certainly a lot easier than us than at the time going to one of the traditional banks, which took ages. So I think those hurdles have certainly become much easier to overcome, I'd say.
I think they're still quite difficult, actually.
Oh, really?
Just from personal experience.
Okay.
Can I just comment with the IT support? It won't take 6 months.
Okay. Well, that's good. Okay, there's still some work to be done then, basically. All right, got it. Yeah, and in terms of getting offices and all the rest of it, that's also quite easy, I'd say. I mean, there are great places like here, level 39. So I should definitely recommend you to apply for that if you think that's kind of suits your profile. Great, but there are many others. There's a very big market for commercial rental, commercial office space in London, and it's easy and it's quick to get something that will work for you.
I think you've probably covered it quite succinctly and quite well. I think for us, probably we had a lot of clients in the UK. We're an Estonian bank. We were sort of quite strong in servicing regulated fintechs out of the European countries. Because we've built up kind of a strong clientele, they were all asking for UK payment services, and so we were kind of, I guess, driven by demand to come here. And so I think the biggest challenge for us was, probably getting approval from the board, because in Estonia, LHV is a kind of a huge retail bank, and kind of trying to explain to them that, well, we're going to provide kind of B2B banking services in the UK, and it's kind of segregated from what we're doing here was quite challenging. And once you have the board on kind of believing in the story, it's actually quite easy to come here for the reasons that you kind of just mentioned. So for us, it was kind of an educational piece internally to kind of explain that this is where we want to go, and so far it's turned out okay.
Yeah. Maybe actually on that note, something. I mean, I don't know how many of you are kind of in the financial industry and needs to get become regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority and so forth, or basically running regulated businesses in your current countries at the moment. But I would say, as a general note, the FCA are quite good. I mean, and certainly if I compare to some of my friends who are regulated by other regulators in other European countries, it does seem certainly that they are the gold standard in many ways, particularly in more kind of innovative parts of the financial industry. They're good. Still, it's a government body, with all of that, but they're good. I'd say that I would choose to be regulated under the FCA than compared to being regulated under quite a lot of the other continental European regulators. So that's actually a very good thing.
So, obstacles. When you tried to start, what caused you some obstacles? What issues, problems? You've got this great plan, you've got your presentation, the board's approved it, you're ready to go, and all of a sudden, what happens? I've got one, but you two go first. Okay, so with us, we had a card reader, recruited a UK team, everything ready to go. Visa wouldn't certify the card reader, so we went out to market with a credit card reader that would only accept American Express and MasterCard and no Visa. So our engineering department very quickly had to put a workaround where we had to sort of authorize it via text message. It wasn't for long, it was probably for 3 months, but you know, imagine the founders in Sweden that have got this great plan for the UK, we're all ready to go, it's all cooking on gas, we've recruited this great team. You know, I was working with people from ex-Goldman Sachs, Facebook, Google, we had our offices above Victoria Station, we had a big long lead list of where we were going to go, and all of a sudden we weren't certified. It's just, it happens, you know, you just got to roll with the punches and push on forward. So it happens.
We had some really kind of unexpected ones, and I think part of this is because I think you sort of mentioned it about kind of population size, but Estonia is quite a small country, and so when we launched here, we actually had to overcome some sort of government issues, legislature, so to help us join Faster Payments as a direct scheme participant, and that actually ended up taking a year. So we've done all of the kind of operational work, kind of migration, kind of preparation from AML framework and so on, and then suddenly you get this curveball from the government saying, well, hang on a second, have you thought about this? So in the end, you won't believe this, it took us a year to join Faster Payments as a direct scheme participant, and naturally that has some kind of, you've got to be quite delicate in balancing that for your clients that are sort of desperate for you to join, yeah, it's sort of things that you can't control,
yeah,
so you can do everything.
Yeah. And in the very early stages, what do you think is a fairly common mistake that the assumptions you make when, that's probably more of a question to you, Henrik, because although you were in the UK,
yeah,
what did you think? Well, we can come across from, this is transferable market by market. What are the market differences? What is it that you stumbled across and there was a bit of a shock to you?
Oh, I mean, we did so many mistakes. I don't know where to start. I mean, the whole business model was wrong to start with. That's one. God. I think first, if you come from a huge, like we did, come from a huge organization, big banking houses, etc., right?
Yeah.
You and we thought we didn't underestimate the brand name and what it gives you, but in a way we still did. But maybe from another perspective, we had a solution where we could offer, it was exactly the same risk, no risk on us as a startup, etc. But we saved you 1 to 2 percentage points per annum, massive saving on the financial investment, right? And you think, oh, that's an absolute no-brainer, right? It's an absolute no-brainer. But then you come across things like, well, there's a massive principal agent problem out there. You've got employees at these big institutions and investment funds that, might be a bit cautious, right? Because they don't know maybe exactly then what's going on. It's safer to still work with the big institution that you used to work with because of that reason, because my neighbor is doing the same, so I might not take the step, and if I don't take the step, I'm not risking my career, and all these kind of things. So all this playing, so we were certainly a big victim of that. So we came in at it in the wrong way, I'd say. So that's one thing. But for some miraculous reason, we were able to survive. We did business, and then eventually, we pivoted the business over the years, and slowly and surely, got on the right track. And this thing that was the very main thing at the onset, all of a sudden became very nice to have. And then, when we actually did something, clients that you said, oh my God, yeah, you actually did save us a lot of money as well. Yeah, we tried to tell you. So it's that was one thing for us, certainly. The brand, and then yeah, it's basically, I think, another funny story on that. So we set the budget for our first full financial year, and we managed to get the budget right down to £1,000, perfectly right. It's just the wrong sign. Yeah. So that was quite an
Do you
achievement.
underestimate? Do you underestimate or overestimate?
We certainly overestimated it, right?
Yeah.
And then with the wrong sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I would just say as well, don't like just from the banking side where you have electronic money institutions or basically any businesses that want to kind of open up bank accounts with you. Don't underestimate the resource that kind of is probably required to set up shop here, because you can't just have a brass plate, a logo. You need to have the right kind of team in place, because the FCA require that from you, and you need to have an independent MLRO and all sorts of kind of compliant positions that kind of show that you're credible. Maybe less so if you're kind of a tech company, but certainly in the regulated space you need to have the right kind of framework. Otherwise, not only will it be detrimental from the FCA perspective, but also in obtaining a bank account as well, which they sort of slightly vary.
Yeah. I think from us, and we're coming in totally different sort of angle again, but we're talking about card payments, and we're talking about a company that was quite well established, although it was a new product. It was quite well established in Sweden. The founders was quite well known. They were connected to well connected throughout Sweden, so it's quite easy to get traction. And they assumed that dropping into the UK and getting a good team, it would all work. So we were given this plan, big numbers on it, massive numbers, and within sort of 3 months, I managed to convince the sort of Swedish sales director at the time to rip that up and say it's not about revenue now. And it's a little bit what you were talking about with partnerships. I caught the tail end of your presentation. I said this is about where we're seen. So we focused on the rat race, the people that do the urban assault courses, Winter Wonderland, the serial killer cafe, which was in all the news. It was two hipsters that were just selling breakfast cereal, and they had like 1 million followers on Twitter. We need to put our place so we could bounce off these partnerships and get our strategically placed. So then the hipsters would look at serial killer cafe, see our card reader and our solution there, and think that's what we need to do, and it worked. It was just all about these little strategic partnerships and about going over and above what they expected. I'll give you an example, very quick one. We were working in the festival space. It wasn't a case of us turning up and giving out card readers to the festival and the stall holders. We stayed on site and we had radios in case there's any issues. But when it rained, the poncho queue was huge. I mean, it was down round the block. There was probably 150 people in the poncho queue. Purely by accident, we were coming through, actually going to the bar, but it doesn't matter. We were coming through, but we all had card readers on us, so we cleared that queue in about 5 minutes, just as the festival owner was walking past. He said, I've never seen anything like that. He got on the phone, he talked to everybody about us. It's just about going over and above what is expected. It's not about that big number and thinking, right, the Swedish office are expecting a boiler room scenario. We get 10 salespeople, we'll pound the phones all day. It wasn't about that. We succeeded through being seen to be working with the right people and then going over and above what was expected. That works in the UK. If you come in as brand new, it's about who you partner and how you partner. And I think that's applicable right across the board. It doesn't matter about.
Yeah.
What was your timeline in the UK? Was it a slow or fast process? Did you think you were going to crack it in a month and it took you a year, or?
Well, it depends on what you mean in terms of the timeline and getting things set up and so forth.
Expanding and getting a little bit of traction. So you've done your initial licenses, you're ready to go. When did you think you'd start getting traction? Do you think you'd get it in the first quarter, first year? How did you budget and what actually happened?
So in terms of getting everything set up, like all the operational stuff, that was that went quite smoothly, I'd say. We were kind of within our expectations. It took a few months. Becoming regulated by the FCA, we did expect that to be a bit of a pain, but at the end of the day, working with the right compliance consultant, and there are a bunch of them here that are quite good, it wasn't too bad at the end. The business though, and that's another story. That took about twice the time that we expected. Right? So instead of 1 year, it took 2 years. Yeah.
And what was the thing that drove you on in the second year when you should
In the
have been
second
where you
year.
were, and you all you started out all as friends. Did you stay friends?
Oh yeah, we stayed friends. Long and happy marriage. And actually, my co-founders, we used to work with each other back in banking, so we've been like working with each other now for 16 years plus or something like that. Yeah, there's been quite a few arguments.
Yeah.
But we stayed friends. So it worked out. It's worked out well. Yeah.
Daniel?
The clients that we serve, I think it's probably quite similar to Trustly and a few other sort of big fintechs around here, is that it takes your clientele quite a while to start pushing volume through the business. Often it can take sort of 12, 18 months before the full volume start coming through. So actually we're seeing now, having launched in the UK maybe sort of a couple of years ago, which is just after a couple of years ago, we're now seeing kind of really strong flows, but it does take some time. So there's kind of getting the administrative steps done, but then there's actually kind of how it's affecting business. So I'm sure it's the same, what you said kind of earlier on really resonated with me about having the right kind of partnerships set up, because actually if you don't define them correctly in the beginning, it can be quite detrimental to kind of how you grow and sort of be a pain. But equally, if it's right, then you can fly together. So yeah, it's quite important to get right.
Is anybody connected to Monzo banking here before I tell this story? No. Just as a fintech story, because it still resonates with me in whatever business you're in. I think it's applicable. The best scale up I ever saw was Monzo when they had a waiting list for the cards. There was the bright orange or pink cards. I can't remember, bright orange, right? Bright orange. Everybody in London wanted them because you could have 3 transactions when you went abroad. So all the fintech people wanted them, and there was a waiting list of 80,000 or whatever. And I was in an office, and there was probably 30, at that time, I'd been at ISO a few years, there was probably 30 people in the office, and somebody got a code. And I watched 34 people each sign up one by one across the office. As soon as somebody signed up, they got a code. Somebody signed up, 34 people, it must have been a matter of 15 minutes. I've never seen anything like it or since. So if anybody's working in fintech and wants to study like something viral to scale in the UK, Monzo absolutely, in my experience, I saw it firsthand and absolutely nailed it. Now, how much traction they got after that, because everybody got the card, did they use it? I don't know. I didn't use mine very often. I just thought it was cool and really wanted. It was FOMO. If you can create FOMO, it's a powerful thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how important, and this is quite applicable right now, because everybody's working from home and scaling back on offices. How important do you think it is for a physical? I'm going to ask Daniel this. A physical presence in the UK.
Well, it's not very important anymore, particularly if you're a tech company. But having said that, if you're regulated, and you have customer deposits, then it probably is quite important. So I mean, joking aside, I do think that particularly in London, if you have your clients here, your suppliers here, your third-party providers here, it makes sense. And again, I can't remember who said it, but when it's something that you can't necessarily feel or touch or derive like a concrete value from, but it's really, really important to us. And as I said, the last 2 years have kind of been an exception, but it's been great to be here. And yeah, I mean, for us personally, we're now going for a banking application, so we absolutely have to have presence here.
And then if you're talking about partnerships and meetings and growth and expansion, how do you feel about that? Because I've got my own opinion, which I'll say at the end, but as opposed to you're doing your remote partnerships or whatever, as opposed to having a physical office or meeting people in places like this. How have you found it, and what are your thoughts going forward? Would you rather meet somebody in person, or are you happy just to crack on over Zoom?
Well, I'll just say one thing before passing. So the other day, I kind of I came into the office. I travelled. I live slightly outside of London, so I travelled into the office, packed my bags, got on the train, got into the office, first meeting of the day in the boardroom, and then opened up my laptop and I'm having a meeting on Zoom. Some things are sort of, why have I just travelled all this way to then just basically open up my laptop and have my meeting on Zoom? So I don't look. I'm still having a lot of my meetings, on Zoom, and I don't think, and I think I don't know, maybe other people can kind of call me out on this, but I think that a lot of people are still doing this, and we're not necessarily going to go back, but hybrid's the way forward, right? I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work that out. So, but yeah, I had a little chuckle when that happened because I learned the lesson.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. There's still a certain percentage of meetings you really want to do in person.
Yeah.
But Zoom is great in the way that it's been accepted throughout, all the kind of incumbent institution and so forth, and it saves a tremendous amount of time and travel and money, and it's great.
And I think we're talking about physical presence into the UK as opposed to working remotely from your countries, right? But again, I can only talk from a sales perspective, but as a sales director at Wefarm, most of my team, different teams are scattered all over the world. We've got people in New Zealand, Australia, Far East, Thailand, wherever. But the sales team are in Kenya, right? And when I'm working with marketing or growth or tech or finance or whatever, Zoom's fine. When I have my weekly one-to-ones with the sales team, everything's great. I went over to Kenya in November. I was halfway through biting into my sausage at breakfast, and they give me 30 pieces of insights that every week nobody had said anything to me about. The minute I landed, everybody opened up and wanted to tell me about it. I don't know whether it's a cultural thing between Kenyans, they don't want to say anything over Zoom in case it's been recorded. I don't know what it was, but honestly, I was just about to, and I just got peppered with information. It was all positive, it was good stuff, it was market knowledge, whatever. And I thought, I've been trying to drag this out of you guys for months and months, and the minute I land and have breakfast with you, everything opens up. So, I'm not telling you guys how to run your businesses or whatever, and I know Zoom's amazing, and you're right, but if you're building relationships, I'm old school. I think face to face is the way forward, and I don't think necessarily offices anymore. I think that is old hat. I mean, I was looking at the pricing structure for here, and I've got no vested interest here, by the way. But it's unbelievably cheap. I thought there was a zero missing. It was like for a view, what you get, the culture, the introductions to investors, everything you get. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
You want to increase our rents?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Also, don't underestimate the power of the pub as well, which is you can do your meetings there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Power of the pub.
Oh yeah, that's incredibly powerful actually.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, in the UK, best tips and approaches for success. This is such a broad question. I didn't write this, but.
Oh, I don't know. To be fair, I don't know if it's different here compared to the other Nordic countries. Really, there's been no one thing that's been like, oh, this was completely transformational for us in the UK. You do something and you hope it's going to be transformational, and it's like, oh, did anything change? Not really. But then you look back a while, and I think and I don't think this is unique to the UK, but certainly getting some very big UK names, i.e. logos, certainly did a lot, right? So we landed some of the biggest asset managers here in the UK, old firms, been around for a very long time, and that of course that helps. Yeah, that it certainly does.
So what you're saying is that the quicker you can get validated by the old guard, or some local validation gives you, if you work, especially if a lot of it's remote, you know what I mean? Somebody's going to look on your website, the first thing they say is who else is using them? Yeah. And they don't want to. The first through the door gets shot, right? So you don't ever want to be jumping in first and be the first person in. No. So it's getting that first person that's willing to work with you, and then everything else becomes easier. That's my opinion. Yeah.
If you're again coming from the regulatory angle, and you're launching a PSP or an EMI, do seek help. Like you mentioned before, that you can use some really strong compliance consultants to help you get up and running, and they'll give you the right experience, the right framework to launch, and then they'll help you because of that open a bank account. And I'm just coming from an angle where we look to be as accommodating as possible with fintechs. But if the structure isn't quite to a certain level, then it's just detrimental to you. So, you know, I think that's money well spent. And again, the partnerships comment as well, because, you know, that can, I don't want to stress that enough. That's,
you totally agree. I mean, don't use your in-house general counsel to do your FCA applications. No way. Don't do it. Yeah. Right.
There's things you can sounds like a lesson learned.
It's like you flash back then for a second and you give me a little shudder and it's just like... So...
I didn't offend anyone there, don't worry.
So, from now, today, what are your biggest challenges going ahead? Where do you want to be in 6 months, a year? Where do you see the UK market changing? Is the market... You know, is there anything that's coming that you're worried about? Apart from,
I mean,
start.
It's a few very worrying things right now. War and inflation for everyone. We need to, you know, for ours in particular, we need to grow our sales engine properly. And again, as you say, with sales, and I also have a background in sales. It's one of these areas where you actually have to have them, you know, present and, you know, more time here and so forth, with more face to face and all the rest of it. So that will be our challenge for this year.
is to build out your sales.
Yeah, to build out the sales engine. Yeah.
It's tricky.
Probably without delving into, you know, the huge issues globally. I think for, like, again, PSPs and particularly banks, I think we're struggling as an industry as a whole with probably AML and just generally fraud, things like authorized push payments and fraud. And I think particularly with certain industries that are kind of maturing, digital assets as one of them, I think you know, you've got to be a compliance focused and led institution, because you can't risk kind of making a mistake that will ultimately tarnish your reputation. So I think that is what we see as like the greatest resources going into it, kind of making sure that you know, the AML and audit teams are kind of well built to support basically payments. So I think that's probably no surprise that the bank is talking about fraud, but I think that's quite important.
It's just to double down on all the legislation. After watching WeCrash and the dropout, it's definitely, that's not the model you should go down. I mean, there's a lot of publicity at the minute, right?
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions we've got right now, so we can open up to the floor. I don't know how we're doing for time. What we got?
7 minutes.
Oh, there you go. Look at that. Questions?
I have a question, please. So on the topic of opening up in the UK first time, as a PSP in the Nordic, it's incredibly difficult just to establish a banking relationship with the Nordic banks. They treat you like toxic waste.
Yeah. So
how is that here in the UK? Same problem?
In a way, I think it is the same problem. It's not, toxic waste is quite strong, but I would just say, look, it is really difficult. It is really difficult because particularly as a PSP, when you're processing kind of, you're bringing nested flows, you really need to have the right framework in place to kind of show that you're on control of everything. Like again, you know, seeing lots of EMIs that are on board. I mentioned this before, but you know, if you don't have the right framework, you know, MLROs and kind of experience dealing with stuff, that it's going to be detrimental to your application. So I would almost recommend actually make sure that everything is finalised, all your policies are finalised before you submit to the bank, because even though the FCA might say, yeah, we're happy with everything in principle, that same threshold isn't necessarily mirrored by the bank. So, and also the other thing is that there aren't that many banking providers across the UK and Europe. You know, there's a handful of them, so actually you'll end up probably speaking to all of them. I think also as an Estonian bank that will have plans to go to the Nordics, we'll probably find it just as difficult to open up a banking relationship there as well.
Yeah. I have a question for John. So as Global Sales Director for Wefarm, I'm just wondering, you're obviously selling globally, and setting up in the UK in order to sell globally.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the advantages of being a British global
Okay,
offering?
so Wefarm is probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, so it's pivoted, right? So it started off being a text messaging service for small scale farmers around the world to share information about farming. 6 months ago, we pivoted into digital, so we built a whole new social network so farmers can share. Then we built a whole new platform so farmers can buy inputs at the right prices, etc. So at the minute, although I've got global sales direction, because when I joined, we were still working in Tanzania, Uganda, and quite a few. We scaled that right back until we've nailed down the model in Kenya, and then we're going back out again. We'll be going to India and all the other African countries, and eventually Thailand and all the other places, right? So for us, I don't think we see ourselves as a UK company. Do you know what I mean? I know we're registered in the UK, but we've also got a company entity in Uganda, and we've got one in Kenya. I think we have to be perceived as a global company. I mean, I think we've got something like 12, 13 different nationalities that work for Wefarm. You know, it's just, we have, as a company, you have to put one address on your website, right? And we just put Regent Street because that's where the London office used to be. And that's where it started, really.
Quick question on your recruitment strategy. How do you get right talent?
Yeah.
It's really difficult. I think genuinely it's really difficult. We've sought help before, and I think it probably varies depending on which positions you're trying to hire. Certainly, compliance fee sales are quite different, but yeah, as I said again, we've sought help to get us to do it. But there are some specialists which. And then after a while, once you kind of see the applications that come through from them, you can maybe bring that process in-house as well. So yeah, I don't envy anyone having to do that.
I think for sales, it was just about, we were a new product, new company, and I didn't hire the conventional sales track history type people. I was recruiting people straight out of university that had been doing an entrepreneur's degree, but it was about, there's a saying from a really cheesy film called The Internship, and it was a Google layover test. If you got stuck at an airport with this person for 6 hours, would you find them interesting, right? And it was about the backstory, it's about the energy when they walked in the room, it's about something that could grab you, because at the end of the day, they're going out and potentially cold calling. We didn't give them leads, they're going out and finding these, whether you're dealing with a massive global partnership or a market trader, people are people, right? So it's all about enthusiasm, and that enthusiasm is contagious. So for us, it was about hiring somebody that when they walked in the room said, yeah, you know, I'd like to go for a beer with them, they're quite good fun. And we created this sort of culture. They weren't all the same, they were very different, but that's how we hired. And then with the tech side, they tried recruitment agencies, and I think did exactly what you suggested, which is you use the recruitment agencies to sort of decide what you want, and then once you've nailed it, then you can just clone that and just run yourself because you know what you're really looking for. But yeah, it's super difficult.
And expensive as well.
Yeah.
Henrik? No, I think it's, you know, we're not a huge firm. You know, we're still small. You know, firm, and it's such a huge risk as well. I think, you know, if you do a bad employment, right, it's a massive risk for a small company. So we've always preferred to hire people that we know or we kind of worked with in the past, even though we know they have shortcomings in, you know, certain areas. It feels much better to know about those and know what you're getting than you know, in a lot of cases taking risk on some critical things. We have to move away from that. You can do that to a certain, you know, to a certain extent, but right now where we are, that's very much been the kind of the main model thus far. Yeah, hard. Yeah, there's no, I have no secret sauce. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Final question. We heard earlier about the kind of attractiveness of the Nordic Baltic brand in the UK. So
Yeah.
have you seen it, has has it benefited you, has it been beneficial for you, or have you highlighted that Sprank are under the company or yourself?
I mean, you just have to go to Anarchy or something.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just something that it's just that secret sauce that the Nordic Baltic design and the branding and everything just appeals to the Brits. You know, I think it's quite popular. I mean, it looks good, and it's like it can almost be designed by Apple. You know what I mean? It's got that little bit of extra thought coming into it. That's how I feel.
It's really helped us, to be honest, because like I don't know anyone who's kind of worked in fintech in London for quite some time. It can sometimes, at least to me, feel a bit cutthroat. Like everyone is competing with one another, and everyone's saying, "Well, we've got this client, we've got that client," and we've kind of LHV have come from a different approach, where Estonians are really kind of collaborative, and we actually partner with some businesses that's on average someone might think, well, hang on a sec, it's quite interesting that they partnered because we might not have done that. So that kind of collaborative approach and friendly kind of approach has really helped us and build the kind of word of mouth kind of referral stuff for us. But I've worked at previous companies where it's not been like that, and it has felt a bit toxic. So it's really refreshing.
No, I think I can only say I think my best experience with that is while I was working in investment banks. Like you have all the country teams, and being kind of Nordic Baltic person, we always got very well along with all the country teams, and that wasn't necessarily true for some of the others. So it will not be a negative, if I put it like that.